As a child, I did not deserve this. She deserved to stop there. Instead of from and stop and still.
Deputies said they are pursuing numerous potential leads connected to the drawing and the video that was made public 24 hours ago. And investigators are working hard tonight to bring Jazmine justice. Investigators in East Harris County may need your assistance to fill a gap. Our Melissa Correa lives close to Wallaceville Road and the Beltway. Mel, one of the main questions of the day is why we don't have more pictures. I simply miss my little one. I will always have a void in my heart since I miss her so much. LaPortia Washington experiences the unfathomable loss via tears and from her hospital bed. An innocent youngster who did not deserve this was taken away by him. This was not at all what she deserved. It would be impossible for me to wake up every morning without her. February 11, 2011. Jazmine Barnes would be welcomed into the world. Her father, Christopher Seville, and mother, LaPortia Washington, would give birth to her. Even if their relationship didn't work out, the parents would still be friendly and raise her in Texas. She would grow up in the Houston region. Family members describe her as a love child. In case you are unaware, that is essentially an unmarried child born to unmarried parents. A union is what marriage is. However, it is merely a piece of paper in this day and age. Additionally, a piece of paper won't make you stop loving your child. She would be brought up and cared for, someone who was deeply cherished. But her family wasn't the only one affected. It was everyone she came into contact with. Jazmine emerged from the chute. Are you prepared, Jay? Are you prepared, Jazz? She will develop from a baby into a child as time goes by. And before you know it, 2018 has arrived. At the age of 7, Jazmine Barnes is a second grader at LeMonahan Elementary. She has an extremely compassionate nature. She loved caring for others and hugging them. She is also regarded as an excellent learner, someone who was cheerful, intelligent, and eager to learn. Jazmine was intelligent. She quickly grasped the concept. Her teacher actually promised to hire her right away if she applied for a job. She loved listening to music when she wasn't occupied with her academics, school, or socializing with friends and family. And dancing was one of her favorite activities. She was no different from other kids at the end of December. As her Christmas holiday was coming to an end, she was preparing to return to school. However, there would be one empty seat when the first bell rang, and all the kids filed back into class. There would be no Jazmine Barnes. There would be a crime before school started. A crime that would drive Houston to its knees. December 30th, 2018, Sunday. This morning, Jazmine's mother would get into a car with her 3 sisters and head to the supermarket. The idea was to go to the supermarket and get coffee and juice to go with their mother's breakfast. It appeared to be an ordinary day. The woman was driving with the children in the rear seat. But then something would happen all of a sudden. Shots would start to sound as a car pulled up next to them. Panic would set in at that point. As the mother attempted to flee, glass fragments flew into the air. The mother would pull to the side of the road to see how her kids were doing when everything appeared to be in order. The mother would be hit in the arm during this moment. The kids appeared fine for the most part until one of them said, "Jazmine was hurt." At this point, Jazmine is not responding. She was struck in the head area. As they approached the location, sirens could be heard in the distance. However, 7-year-old Jazmine Barnes would be declared dead when police and emergency medical services arrived. Police would start their analysis after recording the scene. The mother would be taken to the hospital while the other children were placed in the care of family while the crime scene was being investigated. She would get treatment for her arm damage and she would recover. However, she would receive some unfavorable news after receiving treatment. The bad news was that her daughter had left. There is no time to waste in the field of investigation. Additionally, an interview must be done even when you are grieving. That's what the investigators would do. Both the mother and the surviving children would be interviewed. Since the mother is the driver, she saw nothing. But the kids would tell a different tale. They said they had witnessed everything. They knew the culprit drove a red vehicle with 4 doors, even though they were unable to produce a model. He was described as a white man in his 40s, dressed in a hoodie with the hood pulled up over his head. The kids said he had blue eyes, was slender and pale, and had a very short beard. More of a 5-foot shadow than a complete beard. A manhunt would then start without warning. The eyewitness statement was the only source of information used by the investigators. As the investigation's first day draws to a close, they are no closer to identifying the culprit on the second day. Nonetheless, the red truck was captured on camera by the police. They would share a positive drawing of the culprit in addition to the security footage. Questions would start to surface when the sketch was made public. What motivated him to accomplish what he did? And who was he? Only he could respond to those questions. Tonight, investigators are working hard to bring Jazmine justice. According to deputies, they are pursuing numerous potential leads connected to the sketch and the video that was made public 24 hours ago. Today, both parents made heartfelt pleas from the hospital to the podium. I simply ask everyone who knows anything about my daughter's murder to come forward as if it were their own. The investigators would get a break while pursuing leads. They would discover that a man was arrested on the day of the incident. Robert Cantra, 49, was taken into custody on suspicion of robbery and fleeing police in a car. However, the charges weren't really noteworthy. Robert was the first suspect because of his striking likeness to the sketch and the fact that he fit the description. The investigators would remove Robert Cantrell from his cell and put him in a holding area so they could question him further. But he would refute all of the charges. He claimed to be innocent and unrelated to the young girl's ordeal. The authorities had nothing but the sketch, and if someone looks like a picture, you cannot convict them. Therefore, even if they believed they were onto something, they weren't. They would have to start over after Robert Cantrell was returned to his cell. January 1st, 2019, a Tuesday. Any information that results in the offender's capture would be rewarded with $35,000. She has become a national celebrity. With Shaquille O'Neal promising to cover the burial, other celebrities got involved. The $35,000 incentive would soon increase to $60,000. However, tips continued to come in despite the prize being increased, but none of them were successful. The prize was an incredible $100,000 by January 4, 2019, and it seems to work. A tip would be given to the authorities. They might describe a potential suspect in this tip. Then comes January 5, 2019, the next day. Eric Black Jr., 20, would be taken into custody. When the officer arrived at the car after pulling him over for failing to signal at a light, he noticed an odd odor. He would be detained and sent to the nearby jail after it was discovered that he was in possession of the car. However, he would be questioned about what happened to Jazmine Barnes as soon as he arrived, and the officer noticed that he looked like the tip that came in through the strange line. He initially disputes everything. He maintains that narrative while claiming to be ignorant. Jazmine Barnes would be buried a few days later. A 2,000-seat church would be packed with friends, family, acquaintances, and even strangers to pay their respects. Applause. Music. In honor of my baby girl, I adore and thank every single soul and body that is currently filling this building. Music. Applause. She restored and strengthened a great number of strained relationships worldwide and brought peace and harmony to many families. Not only in Houston, but globally as well. She completed her work here, and it was flawless. From heaven, where I will live with God above, I am writing this, where there is only unending love and no more tears, suffering, or grief. Please don't let the fact that I'm not visible make you miserable. Never forget that I am with you at all times. Morning, noon, and night. I had to part ways with you one day. When my earthly life came to an end, God took me up, gave me a hug, and said, I welcome you. It's good to have you back again. Music. Following the funeral, Eric Black would be questioned once more, and a miracle would occur. Eric Black would make a complete admission. He actually informed the authorities that the weapon remained at his house. However, He claims he wasn't alone, which further complicates matters. There was another person with him, a man who performed the act. Eric Black would be charged with murder following a complete confession. His accomplice was also imprisoned on January 10, 2019, a few days later. Larry Woodruff, then 24, would be taken into custody by the police. He would be accused of murder as well. However, there was one issue. These two individuals don't resemble the sketch at all. Were the correct suspects being held by the authorities? Or was all of this miscommunication? A query that would be addressed in due course. Eric Black, 20, and Larry Woodruff, 24, are currently incarcerated. Both of them had bonds totaling more than $1 million and were incarcerated. Then something takes place. Eric Black, 20, has had his bond lowered to only $150,000. He just required $15,000 because, if you don't understand how a bond works, you only need 10% to walk the streets freely. After posting that bond, Eric Black was once more free to await his trial. The first suspect, 49-year-old Robert Cantra, who bore a striking likeness to the sketch, is the subject of an incident shortly after Eric Black posts his bond. Are you curious about his fate? He was discovered within his cell in the Montgomery prison. Passed away. I can't tell you the precise code because of the restrictions, but I can tell you this. He did it to himself, as it was determined to be self-inflicted. It is said that Eric Black and Larry Woodruff will both go on trial in 2022. Eric Black's trial would take place first, but he would appear and enter a guilty plea right away. Larry Woodruff, who is still maintaining his innocence, will bat next. The authorities had nothing save Eric Black's confession. Larry's cell phone pinging nearby on the morning of the event was the only evidence they had to link him to the site. The trial appeared to be proceeding in the path of the defending team. That is, until a star witness is called by the prosecution. Eric Black was the star witness. Eric Black would testify and provide his account of what happened. He claims that he and Larry Woodruff were inside the car selling some goods on the morning of the event. I won't go into specifics because you can figure it out. Something occurs while they are out serving the streets. They pass a silver Dodge Avenger on the road. Eric Black claims that Larry was in the passenger seat while he drove at the time. Eric claims that because he had sold some guys merchandise earlier that day, the Dodge Avenger stuck out. A few men who we were operating a silver Dodge Avenger as well. It turns out that these people were upset that Eric had shorted them. They began making threats on Twitter as a result. They discover another silver Dodge Avenger a few hours after this tweet. He claims that they were acting on the premise that "I'll get you before you get me" at the time. He said that they pulled up next to the car. Eric is behind the wheel once more. The person with the gun is Larry, who is seated in the passenger seat. According to Eric, they were unable to see who was inside the car. They assumed it was them, as they only spotted a few heads inside the vehicle. He claims that once Larry Woodruff started shooting, they drove away from the scene before the smoke cleared, not realizing that a mother and her kids were in the back car at the time. This indicates that the motive that killed 7-year-old Jazmine Barnes was simply mistaken identity. After hearing the account, the jury left to deliberate, and upon their return, they found Larry Woodruff guilty of murder. Larry would be sentenced to life in jail without the possibility of parole for his involvement in this act. Eric Black's response to his involvement in the incident was a plea. Compared to the 99 years he was facing, he would only be sentenced to 30 years in prison. However, as they say, the first person to tell gets the deal. Even though the offenders are currently incarcerated and serving their sentences, there are still unanswered questions. In fact, the father stated that he didn't think they had the proper persons when the trial started. He stated that if the wrong people are on trial, he does not desire justice. I think it's a circus. There's a bunch of lies being told, adds Christopher Sayila, who claims that Jazmine's surviving sisters assured him that nothing was made up. They are aware of what they witnessed. They caught sight of him. They gazed into his blue eyes. The mother's testimony is also included. She claims that this red truck moved up in front of them and kept shooting in addition to being beside them. And he didn't end there. He drove ahead of us, came to a stop, and kept shooting at us. To seek justice for my child, I need everyone to work together. Finally, the kids mentioned that the man in the image had first gotten into a fight with her mother at a grocery store parking lot. Heather, Jazmine's stepmother, claims she will never forget what Jazmine's siblings said while she was in the hospital. My mom got into an argument with this guy, a white man with blue eyes who had a red truck, while she was buying us soda and candy at the gas station, she claimed. Eric Black posted a $150,000 bond. How did you come up with $15,000 when you couldn't even post the $5,000 bond for the charges you were initially charged with? That means you only needed $500 to walk on those, but you never posted that. He came on our side. How could you change that story of what stained in a 6-year-old brain? But now, all of a sudden, that never happened. They said that eyewitness accounts can't always be believed. In the end, it's a heartbreaking story. Jazmine Barnes was 7 years old. By all accounts, she was a loving, energetic, caring soul. One day, things were cut short. Her family and friends will never again get to glare at that smile or hear her laughter. And everything that was to come is now a big what if. Rest in peace, Jazmine Barnes. Thank you for being a life for others. At this moment, I would say I hope you get the justice you deserve, but let them tell you it was already done. I'll just tell you to relax, and I hope the whole story emerges.